Welcome, everyone. This is the next episode of Unchained Business. I am Caleb Jones. I am with
Miss Billie Olds, the Ginger Ninja.
Miss Billie Olds is looking beautiful today. I was just commenting about how pretty she looks.
Lighting
if you're watching the video version of this.
Yeah. Lighting and lipstick. Thank goodness.
You've upped your appearance game.
I upped my camera. And
okay, that helps too. I did that
because my ring light broke.
Oh, I got it. Okay, yeah. I am trying to up my microphone game. So in the last few videos, I realized both in the YouTube videos I do and these podcasts, I move around a lot. If you guys didn't know, if you're watching the video, I move around a lot. I'm a very high energy guy. So what happens is you can hear in the audio. I move away from the microphone and it gets quiet, and then I move back to the microphone and it stays nice and loud. So what I've done is I've aimed the microphone right at my mouth instead of having to the side. And was on several Zoom calls today for joint ventures. And I was trying to focus and not move my head as I talk into the microphone like this, like I'm a radio announcer where you just don't move. Oh, it's so hard, but I'm gonna have to practice that a little better. Or I could get what they call an omnidirectional mic, which I used to have, but then it picks up all the sound around the room. Like I have a little fan going over here you can't hear, and damned if you do, damned if you don't. So we're all trying to up our presentation game for you audience. I was about to say a bad word, you audience members. I was about to say you mother blankers, but I'm trying to dial that down as well to be more.
Now, Caleb.
Yeah.
I swear like a sailor. Who am I kidding?
Well, we both do, but you haven't done this lately, but you've said things in the past. I think I've gotten better when I do like webinars and stuff. You're like, Caleb, like when I said ruler of Dubai on my thing, and then when I started swearing or talking about, non-business topics and things like that. Yeah. So I am trying to dial that back a little bit, especially as we get more people, more eyeballs to this content. So yeah.
I know, Caleb, it's a struggle. It's a struggle.
The struggle is real.
Both doing it.
I know. Really quick, by the time you hear this, if you did not already know, finally, and I have been dragging my feet on this, and it is now done by the time you hear this, the Unchained Business Podcast is now up at all of our usual podcast platforms. Yay! It hasn't been before. It's only been in a few places. Believe it or not, my lovely wife, Pink Firefly, is the one who actually uploaded all the back episodes. So this is episode 15. I'm not sure. Okay, don't quote me. You'll see on the title of this podcast what episode this is. I want to say 14 or 15. But anyway, all the back episodes of the podcast are now there. If you want, I will actually pull up the website we were just talking about, Billie, and I will read off the podcast platforms that we are on. If you didn't know, you go to calebjones.com/podcasts for the Sovereign CEO podcast, and we're on the same platforms as that podcast. We have another podcast, Alpha Male 2.0, and that's on most of the platforms, but not others. Hang on. Let's see, podcast. And I will read them off to you because I'm just that kind of guy. Here we go. So we are on, let's see, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, TuneIn, Stitcher, Castbox. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if this podcast is on Cast, but I believe so. iHeartRadio, we're on that. Overcast, Acast, and we should be on Amazon Music. That's something I just added a few months ago, so that should be on the those of you who use Amazon Music. We're on all those platforms. Plus, obviously, we are on YouTube for the video version. And I don't know if we propagate this to Rumble and Odyssey. I don't think we do. We have a lot of followers over there. So we're all over the place. So there you go. Because I know a lot of you have been asking, and it's been my fault. Like, Caleb, can I list this podcast on our normal thing instead of just doing YouTube? Sorry. Yes, you can now. So you can go to, if you go to any of those podcast platforms, there is no website page set up for this yet. There will be soon. Maybe by the time you watch this or hear this, there might be. But if you just go to any one of those podcast platforms and search on Unchained Business, we are the only one. I made goddamn sure that we were the only one, because that was the problem earlier. We were business badassery. And to set this up on those platforms, I had to type in business badassery, and some other podcast came up. But So Unchained Business, we're there. We have our own logo, all that good stuff. So just so you know, and I apologize for the delay. I got a lot on my plate, especially lately. You want to talk about our topic? It was your idea, so why don't you introduce it?
Well, a lot of people come to me and ask, Billy, what do I do if I don't have money to start a business? I have to
me
quit
too.
a job, or I have a family and kids to support. I can't just quit my job until I have an income. And there's a great feeling of scarcity. And I thought we could talk today about different ways to monetize your business or to step into a place where you have enough money to work on that business without having to jump ship right away.
And so Billy's talking about people who say, hey, I have kids, or I'm recently divorced, or whatever, or I lost my money in blank.
Yeah.
My audience, a lot of you have told me I'm young, I'm 25, I don't have any money. Or some of you older guys, I just went through a divorce. I had money and now I don't. I went through that. So a lot of different scenarios where you have a feeling. Billy just touched on it. It's an emotional thing more than anything else. And at the end of this podcast, you realize this is an emotional thing, not a logistical problem. I mean, it is, but it really isn't. This is a mindset, emotional thing. So before we get into those things really fast, I do want to state for the record, and I'm really big on this. Billy, you can comment on this too. I don't think we ever talked about this, you and I. You don't need a lot of money to start a business. I've said that over and over and over again. Now, it does help to have seed capital to invest in a cool website and immediately get in and start, hiring people and immediately running ads. That's fine. That's good. But you don't need that stuff. As I've said, maybe, 3,000 times, this business, Sovereign CEO, is an outgrowth of another company, which is an outgrowth of another company that I started in 2009, and it cost me a grand total of $29. And I think there was two things. It was like $5 for the hosting platform for my little dumb blog I had back then, and it was something like $22 for the domain name. And that's it. And I didn't spend any money on advertising until I was already making six figures from that business. And today that's a multi-six-figure income stream for me. So you don't need, step zero in this process is to remember that you don't need a bunch of money to start a business. I still get people, I don't know if you do, Billy, but I still get people who say, well, I can't start a business, I have no money. You don't need any money. It's helpful, but you don't need it. What are your thoughts on that before we get into the actual topic? Because we never discussed that.
I feel exactly the same way. People say you can bootstrap a project, and most people's response is, well, I don't have bootstraps. I don't have boots. I'm really from zero. Or I can't take the risk with my steady income stream. So I have to think of something different. And I always feel, as you do, that that's more an excuse than a reality, because you don't, unless you want to start a Airbnb rental business, or you want to develop, there are some
a capital intensive business.
Exactly. There are some scenarios, absolutely, you're going to have to spend money, but in most cases you don't. There are clever workarounds, or there are ways that you can engage a side hustle to monetize what's really the project you'd like to pursue. But the reality is that you don't need money. I'm the same as Caleb. I started with a couple dollars in my checking account and decided to, put my shingle out. That's it.
Right. That's it. And you just networked with people, right? That was your marketing back then? Oh no, Billy's frozen. Billy lives out in the middle of nowhere. And out in the middle of nowhere, your internet sucks. She has like DSL. I'm not kidding. I mean, that makes me laugh, but you're back. Do you need to switch to your mobile thingy?
Yep, I think I'm going to do that. So we have.
Okay, so I'll keep the podcast running. Go ahead and switch. If you log off, just log back on, and I'll talk while you're gone. That's fine.
Awesome, sounds good. I might just try turning my video off. Sorry, guys.
Okay,
that's the one downside of living in the country.
I just told them that while you were gone.
Yeah,
I was making fun of you.
The worst, most painful part, you guys, is that the fiber optic line that runs from one school to another school runs through my front yard. And we're not allowed, no one's allowed to tap into it.
Oh, you're kidding me.
It is so painful.
Oh, that's bullshit.
I have like an easement on the first, I
sucks.
think, 15 feet of my property for that line.
So that speed test you ran for you had the 3 megabit download speed, that'd go to like 100 or actually 200 or 300 if you hit that fiber line.
I know.
Yeah,
if only
so
I were
funny.
sneaky enough to know how to tie in and not get.
Yeah, even I can't do that. I'm out of date on that one. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going
Go
off
ahead.
camera. Those of you listening only, you won't notice any change.
Okay. If you freeze again, maybe we'll try switching your connection. Let's try that. Yeah, just start.
Yep.
Yeah. So for those of you listening, her video is now off. For those of you watching, then you can just look at me. Woo! You're welcome, ladies. So yeah. Where were we? Were you talking or was I talking? I lost track. Oh, we were in a good segue. So I think I asked you what did you do to get your first few clients? Did you just network with people and talk to people? Which is kind of what I did.
I did. I made an ass of myself, which I'm never really afraid to do and don't often realize I'm doing, but just offered to people like, hey, I can help you with that. If I would see a friend on social media who is struggling or a business owner that was in one of the groups I was associated with, I would just reach out and say, hey, I totally have an answer for that.
And how much money did that cost you, Billie, to do that?
That cost me absolutely nothing more than having electricity and some sort of a device with connectivity to the interwebs.
Right.
And most of us have that already, or you wouldn't be listening to or watching us.
Right. So we'll move off that. Billie and I just want to make it clear to you. If you have this thing in your head, well, I need money to start a business. You've got an old school, I need to put out my shingle and get a location and start a Radio Shack, and I need to hire 14 employees. And you don't have to do any of that anymore. This is, the collapsing 2020s. The good thing about the collapsing 2020s is technology is there to help you. Technology is your friend. So you don't need to do that. So let's actually get to the topic. I'll let you start because I know you have some ideas and I'll just kind of riff off those. Of if you do need funds or some funds to get started, if, for example, you could get started for free. So here's an example, and then I'll let Billie take over. So an example would be, you're going to start an internet-based business, like we talk about in the 90-Day Business Builder, 90daybizbuilder.com. In that program, we talk about setting up either coaching, consulting, selling courses, or selling some kind of business or personal service, okay? And you can start all those for very cheap, if not free, okay? Or close to free, like $200. So let's say you start your business for free or close to free, set up a website, set up your offering, set up your niche, all of which we train in that program, by the way. You get all that done, and you're doing organic stuff that's free. You're doing your own outreach, things like that. But you really want to do something else. You want to hire someone, a marketing person, or you want to start running YouTube ads, and that costs some money, and you need some money. This would be an example of if you need some money, not need if you want. So, Billie, you take over. I've been talking enough. So what would that person do in your eyes? What are some creative ways to finance that?
Well, let's start with the most simple way. In most countries right now, there is a labor shortage. So if that means that you pick up a second shift job at your local McBurger chain, your ice cream stand, your coffee house, whatever it is, any place in the service industry offers you opportunity. Even if you're already, working at a higher level, and you say, hey, listen, I don't want to work retail, customer service. My question to you is, do you want to make enough money to step away from your normal job and that second gig? Then take on a side hustle. And the easiest side hustle you can get is working retail or any kind of customer service. They're begging for people in those industries, begging for them, which means that there's a lot more scheduling flexibility than perhaps 5 years ago, even. Well, even pre-pandemic. There's greater flexibility in all service jobs than at any point in the history of my lifetime.
Interesting. I think you're right. You know more about this than I did, but yeah, that's interesting. I think you're right. Post-pandemic. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And we, of course, have, an aging workforce. And many people who during the pandemic opted out of returning to work and retired early.
Right.
So people say this is because people are lazy, that there's a labor shortage because people are lazy. Young
Also true.
particularly are lazy. I would disagree with you, Caleb. I know that we very much disagree on that point, because some of the hardest working and most, people with the greatest hustle are under 25. And
those are the ones who are good. Those are the good ones. Those are the good ones. So not all Gen Zs and millennials are lazy, but if you compare them today, particularly Gen Z, to other generations, they're lazy. Speaking in general. Now, my son is a hardcore millennial and he's a workhorse. So yes, and we have people in our teams we have some amazing people on our team who are under 25, and they're incredible. They're incredible. Now, one caveat to that, these people I'm talking about, none of them are Western. I mean, or quasi-Western. They don't live in the United States, Canada. I mean, they're outside the West. So hint, hint. But yes, so you're right. It's not everybody, but it's as a whole, I just see, I could do a whole thing on this. I won't, but I see, especially with Gen Z, they just don't want to work. And they get offended if you tell them they have to work. And that wasn't the case Gen X. I'm Gen X. So are you, Billie. You're young Gen X. That wasn't the case when I was in my early 20s, when we had other Gen Xers who were young. We weren't like, I got to work. I just want to stay home all day. You had one friend out of 10 who was like that. And he was the weirdo. All the rest were normal. Okay, let's go to work and let's start a company. Let's do what we need. And anyway, that's but that doesn't discount your other points. Your other points are accurate. Early retirement. What else? I haven't studied this issue too much. You're right. There's a big labor shortage. Early retirement. More demanding in terms of scheduling and in terms of what hours they want to work. Again, post-pandemic. There's a lot of other factors that also are in play. You mentioned the early retirement. I forgot about that. You're right.
Absolutely. And this is to your advantage. You may say there's no way in hell I'd consider working at McBurger Shop. But the reality is, if it makes you an extra $15 an hour and all you need is $200, $1,000, $2,000, think about how quickly you can make that with minimal effort. Are you going to be jumping for joy to be working as a cashier at a supermarket? No. But is it going to make you money? Absolutely. And Caleb, I think you and I can speak from experience. When you were a young person just starting out, did you have more than one job? Or more than one?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. Oh my God. So, I had more than one job, and then I had a job plus a business that actually took time. So let me think way back. So my first job, let's see, I'm trying to think back when I was doing multiple jobs.
And because Caleb and I are weirdos, we started with this mentality of multiple jobs, like in our early teens or earlier still.
Well, because I wanted money, because it's what you just said. I wanted money. I came from a poor family. I couldn't stand it. So I wanted money and I wanted to build my own business. I said the only way to do that. I just remember now. So I did technical support during the day. This was before they outsourced it, right before they outsourced, I can't talk. Right before, I'm practicing speaking more slowly as well. This was right before, this is so painful to talk this slow. This was right before India outsourced the technical support functions from the United States. They outsourced it to India. This is the early 90s. So I did technical support for DOS utilities. I'm dating myself now. And then at night, and actually on weekends, I would do data entry. And I've talked about how that was my first real job, data entry. And if you're watching the video, all I did, I've shown this before. I would do this for 8 hours a day. Okay. Talk about shit jobs. This is what I did for 8 hours a day. If you're watching the video, this is it. I had a keypad in one hand and I would type with one hand. The other hand, I would turn papers over and type numbers into a screen. I worked for a hospital and you had to go chook on the little membership cards. And I would enter in all the membership card stuff. It was great. And that's what I did. That was my first job. I did that for hours and hours and hours a day. And it was lame and it was awful and I hated it, but I wanted money. So I just did it. I just sucked it up and did it. And that's how that works sometimes. And as Billie is reconnecting, let me say something else to what she said earlier. If you say to me, I don't want to work at Taco Bell, I don't want to work at Starbucks, I don't want to work at Nordstrom's. Is Nordstrom's even around? I don't want to work for retail. I don't want to do that. I went to college and I just want to stay home and watch Netflix and smoke weed. These are the two extensive ends of the excuses. If you had a choice between sticking at your horrible, soul-sucking, no freedom, collapsing 9-to-5 job for the rest of your life, or working at your 9-to-5 job plus a second job for 6 months, let's say, okay, or let's say a year, and then you could quit your job at the end of the year and never have a job ever again like me. I haven't had a job in 26 years. Would that be a good deal or would that be a bad deal? It'd be a good deal. So instead of focusing on the negative, focus on the result. You're not going to earn the extra money to go out and get drunk on Friday night. You're going to earn the extra money to dump it in your business, to scale your business and build your business and build that income source so that you can quit. And I have formulas about when people can quit their job. We can talk about that if you want, but keep that mindset instead of saying, I don't want to work, because I hear so much of that crap from men and women, both in their 20s and early 30s these days. It makes me sick. So you've just got to focus on the objective and not the pain. Are you back, Billie?
I'm back, Caleb.
Cool.
I'm on my phone now, guys, so I apologize if the quality is lousy.
That's awesome.
Oh, it's so frustrating.
Yeah, I understand.
But there's always a workaround. So, yeah, I did. And I agree with you 100%. I had to kind of restart my life about 10 years ago. And I worked at Arby's for a while. I mean, honestly.
Really? 10 years ago? So you're in your 30s?
Just after I broke my back. Yep.
Oh, I didn't know this.
And I was able to get moving. Okay. I went through a rough patch and I lost almost everything I owned. Literally. And we can talk about that another time if anyone's interested and how you rebound from something like that.
Because I went through something with my divorce when I was 35 around the same time. So we should do a podcast on. Let's try to remember that for future podcasts. We forget about our topics. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a really good one.
But I had to start over. And so I got an office job working, 8 to 5. And after that, I would go to Arby's because a friend of mine was the manager. They were short of staff and he would let me come, basically come in when I wanted to. I also, at the same time, worked at the local Elks Lodge.
No kidding.
Yep. I waitress for the first and last time in my life. I'm terrible at it because I have no memory and you can't use your project management tools in a job like that. But honestly, it gave me enough money that I felt confident and I could step out on my own much more comfortably. And it was hard. I didn't want to wear some stupid Arby's uniform. That is not an environment. I don't even go to fast food restaurants really. So it was hard. And I felt awful. I felt kind of humiliated having to do that at first. And then I realized, fuck it. You want to rebuild the assets that you have right now is your labor. So get out there and make the most of it that you can. Work 2, 3, 4 jobs. There's no shame in that. Do what you need to do to make that extra money. And if you feel self-conscious, that's all in your head.
So really quick, I want to interrupt you to praise you. So if you guys didn't know, Billie, if you've watched past podcasts in the series, Billie has ownership in several different companies. She's self-employed. She makes high 6 figures today, and she's location independent. So it worked. And she's just talking about 10 years ago. It's not like she had to do this for 35 years. This was 10 years ago. And I assume, Billie, that the money you earned at Arby's did not go to partying with friends on the weekend or buying expensive, fancy, girly clothes or buying cocaine or weed, right? It went to where'd the money go? Where did you put that money?
I put it into getting business cards, which was Vistaprint, $25 or something like that.
So funny. Yeah.
Getting a decent computer. And that's all I needed.
Her business. Perfect.
Yep. That is literally what I needed. I needed, obviously a stable place to live and utilities and all of that normal life stuff. But on top of that, realistically, my needs were internet, a phone, and some kind of a computer. And for many of you, if you're doing coaching, consulting, courses, you need very few tools. I didn't have a website. I still don't have a website. I told Caleb I was going to build it about 6 months ago. And I kind of started and then was like, damn, I just keep getting all of these leads and these new people. So I literally
Then forget the website. Hey, I had my CCM company never had a website and I did just fine. You don't need a website. You don't need one, especially if you're, you got plenty of, eventually you should have one just for your own branding, but you don't need one. And now there's no rush for you. Make the money, get the clients. You're perfect.
That's it. Yeah. And I did that for maybe 7 or 8 months.
So how long did you have to work for Arby's? How long did you have to do that?
I chose to do that for like, I think it was about 7 months. And I did the Elks Lodge.
7 months.
The Elks Lodge a little bit longer, just because I knew a lot of the people who went there.
That'd be a lot easier too.
Like retired teachers and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was easy, and it was 1 or 2 days a week.
That'd be easy. Yeah, that'd be easy. So again, I want you guys to pay attention to this. What she's saying, Billie is hyper successful, and she worked at Arby's, but it only took 7 months. It wasn't like she had to work there for 10 years or 15 years or 40 years. 7 months. And she put the money into things that she needed to scale her income. Business cards. Now, you probably didn't need business cards, but you probably didn't know that at the time. Nope. A good, better computer, stable place to live so you can focus, all that stuff. Yeah. Perfect.
Exactly. And I actually started out with a physical good as well. So Caleb, I think you know this. I own and still own a company called Florelli Jelly, which is edible jelly made out of flowers, like dandelions
like
and peonies and roses and jasmine. Yeah. So I had to buy materials for that. But all I needed to do was buy like 2 cases of jars and pick the wild violets and dandelions in my backyard, get some sugar and a boiling vessel. And that's all I needed. So I wasn't able to afford many supplies at first. I could afford maybe 4 flats of jars. So 48 jars. And then I would go to a farmer's market or to one of those little craft shows. I hate going to those. So eventually I delegated that. So first thing I did was send my ex-boyfriend's aunties would go and sell it.
Perfect.
So really my expenses were incredibly low. I kept my overhead as tight and as low as possible. And the weekends would be spent for those first 2 or 3 months going to farmers markets and different craft and art fairs. And then I could scale, and then I could delegate, et cetera, et cetera. But it was bootstrapped all the way. I started with less than $100 to do that.
I want to tell you guys listening to this podcast or watching us why you should listen to me and Billie. And I'm being literal. I'm not making a joke. Okay. And this is something I have felt for my entire adult life, going back to when I was in my early 20s and had no money. When I was coming up in the world, and Billie, when I'm done, you can comment on this. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are about this, because I don't think we've talked about this either. It was very important to me to learn from people who started with nothing and ended up with a lot. I did not want to learn from people who had wealthy parents, were able to go to Harvard on some kind of scholarship because they liked getting A+ in school, or people who, you know what I'm saying, people who kind of won life's lottery and start out with, great childhoods and it had, this perfect environment and upper class families and things like that. And then they became rich. So like, I remember when the first time I read Donald Trump's Art of the Deal, the book he wrote in the 80s. Okay. The first time I read that, I got to think chapter 3 or 4 when he's talking about his childhood. And then he gets to when he's in high school and he's a senior in high school. And then he literally says, the first page of that chapter, remember this is almost 30 years ago. He said, then my dad gave me $1 million, or then my dad loaned me $4 million to buy my first building. And I literally closed the book and threw it across the room. I said, I'm not reading this. This isn't helpful. Now, years later, I circled back to it reluctantly. Also, like Bill Gates. Bill Gates was the child of a very wealthy, very successful attorney in the Seattle area. And he went to Harvard. Did you go to Harvard? I think that's right. I have never been super interested in people who became successful because they were already successful when they were young, because they had successful parents or they were part of a successful environment. What I felt very strongly about, I wanted to learn from people who started from nothing and then became millionaires. So that's why I really attached myself back in those days to people like Brian Tracy. Brian Tracy used to sleep outside of his car. Sylvester Stallone was homeless for months on end. He had to sell his dog because he couldn't afford to buy food to eat. And now these guys are, multimillionaires. So Billie and I both started from zero. Billie and I both came from lower middle class or upper lower class backgrounds. We never inherited any money. We didn't have wealthy families. We didn't go to Ivy League schools. We had to start from nothing and build what we have from scratch. That's why you should listen to us. And I'm congruent about this because when I was coming up in the world, those are the only people I listened to. I would actually, if I met someone who was successful, I would actually say, I'm sorry for the tangent on this, but this is very important to me. I would actually ask the person, if you start giving me advice and stuff, it was a successful business owner or whatever, I would start asking about his background. And my radar was up for, were you born into a wealthy family? Did you go to a wealthy school and get a bunch of contacts? So by the time you were 19, you had all these contacts with the country who could hire you for these six-figure jobs. And if I heard that, I would kind of just shut down mentally. And maybe I shouldn't, but that's just how I operated. And if I heard, started from nothing, my parents had nothing, I didn't have shit, and I started with what Billie just said. I started with $100, and now I have this. Boom. Now I'm listening to you and I'm taking notes. So that is, in a nutshell, why you should listen to Billie and why you should listen to me. We started from nothing.
Yeah, and I would add to that, Caleb, I think you were like maybe lower middle class. Because both of your parents worked. Your mom was a professor, an educator.
No, she was a homemaker when I was a kid. Later, she went to work when I left the home.
Gotcha. Same for me.
Yeah, we were not poor. I try to make that distinction. We were not poor. We were very financially strapped. My dad had one income supporting a family of 7. So we were very strapped, but we were in a lower middle class neighborhood. Yes, that's correct. Lower middle class.
And in my case, I came from dirt poor farmers. So like real poverty, like food insecurity, especially in the winters. If we couldn't grow it, it was hard, to keep food on the table.
Really?
For mom, dad, 4 kids. We were dirt poor. So we had to learn these things from day one. And I think Caleb is right. The best example I can give is, for those of you who don't know, I used to be a professional equestrian, like riding horses. I trained with 2 different Olympic coaches. One of them won all of these awards. She made the American Olympic team in the 90s. And she won best seat in Germany, which is a big, huge honor for being the best rider, natural rider. And what I learned from her is that she couldn't teach. Because those skills were innate to her, it was like her gift, like a child who's a piano prodigy, right? She couldn't teach much of anything because she couldn't break down into component parts the process that she went to get from point A to point Z. Mm-hmm. And that was the light bulb really went off for me when people, student after student would say, "Oh my God, you're so great at breaking this down so I can understand it." That's only because we didn't have those assets. I didn't have trainers or coaches. I had to figure it out by myself. So you go down all sorts of right and wrong paths from the beginning. And so you come up with many different answers and many different ways to solve a problem that someone with an innate ability really can't teach. So I think having gone through those struggles gives us a lot of material to share with you, because we've taken those wrong turns and backtracked and found our way and had to find a way that also resonated with our individual voices. So really important to honor that.
Getting back to our original topic, how do you feel about, I have my own feelings about this that I've mentioned before. How do you feel about borrowing money when you're starting a business, like credit cards and shit? What is your opinion about that?
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Spend what you have. And if you don't have it, make it or alter your plan. So if your plan was to say, I want to own the big trucks that rescue semis when they break down on the side of the road, that is a capital heavy investment. I personally would not choose to go down that path. I wouldn't want to have that high risk and enterprise, certainly as your first business.
Because of the capital expenditure, right?
Exactly. And because you don't know what you're doing yet.
Right.
You haven't found your business owner feet. Right. You don't know how to hire people to do your bookkeeping. Get the processes in place for an easier business. And by easier, I mean just not as cash hungry. Start a business, dial back your expectation for your first business and make a capital heavy business your second business that can be funded by the first.
That's a good answer. So what she's saying is, if you feel like you need to borrow money to start your own business, you're probably looking at a capital intensive business that you shouldn't be doing for your first business. That's a really interesting answer. That was very insightful. It's not even the issue of debt. It's the issue of you chosen the wrong business model to start. And I agree with what Billie said. I am horrified. I don't see this as much today in a post-internet, post-COVID world, but for most of my life, I would be horrified to see these people who, I'm sure you see this too, Billie, who start their first business and it's a storefront. So they got to rent this expensive storefront. They got to buy all this inventory. They got to run ads. I'm like, oh my God, you're going to go out. I mean, the odds are 85%. You're going to go out of business in 2 years. They mortgage their homes for this, and they always do. They always go to business, and you can see it a mile away. And I just, don't do it. That is, to Billie's point, she's right. If you're going to do a capital intensive business, make that your second or third business. If you really want to do it, don't make it your first, because Billie's right. You don't know what you're doing on your first business. The only exception to that would be if you buy a franchise, and that's a whole different set of problems, but that would be an exception. Other than that, don't do it. Yeah. Right. Good answer.
And if you buy a franchise, you need to have very, very deep pockets in most instances.
Yeah, it's a million plus the cheapest ones. The cheapest franchise I think is Subway. Right?
It depends. I mean, that's of the major franchises. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, that's true. Of fast food franchises, you're right. You could buy, I had an uncle who bought a carpet cleaning franchise, for example. So you can get any kind of franchise. But the problem with franchises is that you're buying a job, in my view, and they're not location dependent in most cases. So that's why I just don't ever talk about franchises. But I'm just saying, to be complete about this, technically you could spend money buying a franchise and they will tell you what to do. That's what you're paying for. But I don't recommend that because that's not location independent. So I wouldn't recommend that.
Exactly. I recommend that people be like me and just build their own franchises to sell, because that's actually, that lift isn't as much as you'd think.
E-Myth Revisited. That's all about that book. Yeah. Treat your business like it's a franchise. Create it like it's a turnkey operation, like you're going to pick it up and sell it someday, even if you never plan on selling it. Because he writes the.
Oh, sorry, Caleb. That's why we advocate so heavily for project management and creating SOPs for everything right away. Is because we're essentially following the franchise model, so we can hand it off to anyone who wants to buy into the business. We could literally hand Caleb's or my businesses over tomorrow.
Right. We could. You wouldn't have us as personalities. We have personality-driven businesses, so we're a little different, but same thing. And what he says, the book is great quote. I've mentioned this quote before. Treat your business as if you're going to sell it, even if you're never going to, for a fact, you're never going to sell it. Because if you never sell your business, you've bought it. So you bought the business that you have. Why would you want to buy a shitty business? That's his whole point. Yeah. And it's a very interesting way of thinking. It changed the whole way I viewed businesses when I read that book, 25 plus years. That's why it's one of the top 10 books I recommend people read. We're coming up on our time here. We covered a lot of stuff in this podcast. Damn, we're pretty good today. We're on fire.
Let me throw one other idea out there. And Caleb, I'd love your input on that. Turn your current job into a freelance position and get another position. Or
we've had people do that.
Do what so many other people do, is go be overemployed. There is nothing wrong with working 2 corporate jobs at the same time. We have some friends who do that, who are employed with 2, one of them with 3 different companies at the same time, because we all know that the workday is padded by so much BS that you can often produce in 30% of the time that you have to sit in an office the actual output that's required. So if you can do 2 remote full-time positions, do that. You might be cranking it out a little bit more than you used to at first, but you'll get into a rhythm and you're going to be able to dial the actual hours that you put into those jobs down dramatically by removing the meetings, removing, people stopping by your desk, the bathroom breaks, the chatter. And without those interruptions, you're going to be able to output so much more quality work in a significantly less time than ever before. Take advantage of that, in my mind. I don't think it's stealing from companies to be doing your job in a time, in a shorter period of time than other people are able to.
When I first met my wife, this is, almost 10 years ago, she was working 3 jobs. She was working full-time in an insurance company. Then on the weekends, she would show apartments. And then she had a third job where it was 5-6 hours a week, where she would show department management for another set of apartments for a property management firm. And for some weird reason, I am attracted to women who are very feminine and are workaholics. And so when she told me that, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Most people are like, why the hell are you working 3 jobs? Interestingly, the girlfriend I had before my wife, I've mentioned this on my other content. She would work she worked at a restaurant. She would work 12, 13-hour shifts. She was a manager, and she would never take breaks. And at least twice while we were dating, she would pass out from exhaustion, and the ambulance would have to come and take her to the hospital because she just kept working and working, never taking a break, and not drinking enough water, not eating. And so if they can do it, you can do it. It's not that hard. Not that big of a deal either. And exactly. As in all of our cases, it was temporary. By the time we were, dating, my wife wasn't working 3 jobs. She got over that stuff. It was just temporary. Yeah. So,
and you can do anything. Be resourceful. If you live in a climate like I do, where there's still freaking snow coming down every once in a while, shovel snow, rake somebody's leaves.
Yeah, whatever.
The investment for those things is one tool that's less than $20. Do whatever it is you can.
And it's only temporary.
It is. Scrimp and save and understand that that's your investment in yourself. You don't need to come from a rich background. You don't need to come from a middle-class background. You don't need to come from a rich Western country. Where you live, there are opportunities. Find them. And that means you have to mindfully look. And that's a great position to be in.
And it's only temporary, because I know what a lot of you guys know. I'm not doing that. I'm gonna use one quick example, and then we gotta go from what you just said, Billy. I had a friend in high school, and I was in high school back in late 80s. I had a buddy, his name was Frank, and he had a lot of money. He had a lower middle class family like me, but he always had tons of money. He had a cool car, and he would buy all this cool equipment for his car. And where do you get all this money? And so what he did is he got some business cards. His name was Frank. And he made a business. He opened a business checking account. He was a teenager. He was like 15 years old, okay? He called it Alexander's Window Washing. And he made it say Alexander's because he didn't want to say Frank's Windows Washing and say, my name is Frank. He made it look bigger than it was. So it's Alexander's Window Washing. And he would just go down to like the local library, the local little office buildings we had. This was in West Lynn, Oregon, suburb of Portland. And he would just go up door to door and show them his business card and say, your windows are really dirty. I can wash them, and I'm really cheap. And he bought, like you just said, Billy, he spent minimal amount of money with his window washing equipment. It was real simple, basic stuff. He got it like, we didn't have Costco back then, but at a big box store. And this guy made money. He was 15. And I went, damn, that's smart. So if a 15-year-old can do it, you can do it. If you need the money. And that is way better than borrowing it or any of those other things. Cool. Any last words before we go? This is great.
The bottom line, guys, is that each and every one of you listening has the capability and the power to do this, regardless of where you live. So keep that in mind. Don't be discouraged. There is no shame in taking a job at Arby's. It's not something I ever thought I would publicly talk about because I still have some lingering feelings of embarrassment about it. But at the end of the day, I did what I needed to do to make the money I needed quickly so I could get the hell out of there and my other 2 jobs.
Right.
And that was in my mid-30s after, falling up, breaking my back and losing everything I owned, basically. If I can do that in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, I guarantee each of you has that power.
No excuses.
Within yourselves. Yep.
Right. No excuses. I hear a lot of excuses from a lot of you fuckers. No excuses. There aren't. There's just preferences and what you choose to make your life. That's it. Cool. Well, thank you very much, Billy. We will be seeing you guys next week. If you are watching this on YouTube, I'm not going to tell you to like and subscribe and all that stuff. Just throw a like on the video. That's good enough. If you want to do more, you can.
Okay, I'll be pushier on this one.
Okay.
Like and subscribe because it makes your Ginger Ninja's heart full.
Yeah, there you go. And you can also rate this podcast on whatever. You can put their star rankings if you have like iTunes or things like that. That'd be useful too if you like this. And we will see you in a week. Thank you very much.
We'll see you then. And don't forget to send your ideas and questions, your ideas for future podcasts and any questions to theonlyblackdragon.com. All one word.
theonlyblackdragon@gmail.com.
Oh, at gmail.com. I'm sorry.
Yep,
see, this is why we keep Caleb around.
Right. That's my function here. Or leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. Either one of those. Because we're open for topics for this thing. Because again, we want to talk about what you guys want us to talk about. We're pretty good at guessing because we know you guys pretty well. But still, yeah, definitely let us know. Cool.
We love your input and we read the comments. For those of you may have noticed, I've started responding to some people on YouTube.
Yes, I have noticed that. Yes.
I'm going to start checking out the other platforms now that we're up. Caleb, I know that you and the team respond to those as well. Yep. So, guys, know that we actually do read this and we do care about what your ideas and thoughts are. So thanks for continuing to share with us.
Correct. Cool. All right. Thank you, guys.